Great. Thank you and welcome. We're just waiting for one of our members to join, but I want to welcome everyone who's joining us on the live stream. And I guess we'll get started. We know that Brenda is going to be joining us, but I want to welcome all our committee members, Jim and Lawrence, and Brenda, who is one of our board members who's going to be here, and we may have some others that are joining. And I want to welcome our staff who do put a lot of work into preparing for these meetings, and we thank you for that. This is our meeting on November 18th. I'm not sure how we got to November 18th. It certainly feels a little holiday-like out there today. I would happen to be down near the distillery today, and the holiday market is is ramping up, and I thought, oh boy, it's time. So happy November 18th. Today is also International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Men. This day was introduced by the Domestic Abuse and Violence International Alliance in 2022 to shed light on the issue and raise awareness. I'd also like to acknowledge that November is Hindu, Albanian, and Lebanese Heritage Month. Today's agenda is not as extensive as our last agendas, but I'm really pleased about that because I think the items that we have to discuss today are actually of great importance. So we look forward to having an update from our CEO, Tom. We're going to focus on our operational dashboard and get an update on our strategic directions. This committee actually, along with tenant engagement, also is the committee that actually oversees our strategic plan and our strategic direction. And we'll have a deputation on that item as well. So with that, I will go on to our next agenda item, which is our land and African ancestral acknowledgements. So Toronto Seniors Housing acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. Toronto Senior Housing also acknowledges all treaty people, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants either in this generation or in generations past, and for those who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. We pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. Just take a moment. Maybe just a moment to reflect. Sometimes I think when we're reading and hearing these acknowledgements, we don't actually think about the meaning behind them. And I like to actually pause for a moment and think about that. So thank you very much. And with that, we'll move to item 3, the approval of the public meeting agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, may I have one of the QTAC committee members move that the November 18th committee public agenda be approved as presented? Lawrence and Jim, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Terrific. Great. So we've got the seconder there. And with that, be it resolved that the November 18th, 2024 public meeting agenda is presented to the QT as presented by the committee is approved. We'll now proceed to item number 4, which is our conflict of interest. May I call for any declarations of conflict of interest? And that relates to our committee members. Hearing none. We'll move on to item 5, which is the approval of the public session minutes of September 30th, 2024. Can I ask if there are any amendments, changes, etc., to the minutes of September? Hopefully people had a chance to take a look at them, and thank you to those who contributed to putting them together.
Brenda here. Sorry, I'm still fiddling with the video, but I just
go ahead, Brenda.
It's regarding the minutes and the item on the legal agreements update. Will there be an update in Tom's presentation on where we are with the legal agreements update? It was in the minutes.
Yeah, through the chair to the committee, and Brenda, I thought that that would be more part of the board report, but if
That's fine.
okay,
Yeah, that's fine. I just, because it was here in this minute, so I just didn't know whether it was going to be an update here in our committee or somewhere else. Okay, that's fine.
But
Thank you.
but we'll minute that, Brenda, to make sure that it does get to the board. So thank you for your
Yeah.
keen eyes on that. Any other questions? All right. So with that, can I have someone to move the approval of the minutes? Lawrence, Jim, I'm looking at the two of you. Jim and Lawrence, second. All in favor? Thank you. All right, so we're going to move on to the action review, and again, thank you for putting that together. And are there any comments with regards to the action list? I think that there might be a question around the first item that we have not actually completely completed. Do you want to comment on that, Grant or Brad? The cameras, I believe, is the one item that wasn't that we're still waiting for.
Yeah, through the chair. We're just waiting on an update. The cameras are the property of Toronto Community Housing, so we're just waiting on an update from them and their security people with regards to the current status of the high definition versus the standard definition cameras that Councillor Crisanti had asked about.
Thanks, Brad. And you'd think by now I'd know who to ask which question. So thank you. Thank you so much for jumping in. Any other questions with regards to the action items?
Brenda
Yep.
here.
Yep, go ahead.
And once again, correct me. Updates on, sorry, I just lost it here. Oh, the CABR training. Yeah, the CABR training, and if there's any update or if that is appropriate at another meeting. Because there was a mention here of CABR training going forward in a list of future training dates. Now, we had one last week. Is it possible to get a report as to the number of board members who have now completed the training?
Through the chair, if I may. So I can provide an update at our CGHRC meeting on Thursday.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Did you, Tom, you look like you're ready to say something.
Grant has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Grant. Sorry. Go ahead, Grant.
Through the chair. Brenda, just want to double check you're referring to the QTE package for today's meeting, because I know we also have another package on corporate governance committee on Thursday, and some of the things you're mentioning, I think, are part of that meeting next or later this week.
Thanks, Grant. I was double.
Yep.
I was thinking that myself.
Thank you. Thank you. I've got different.
And that package was just sent out, the updated.
Right. And I've got different screens in
Sorry.
front of me here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
so you've got the right package now, Brenda, in front of you.
I
Okay.
will.
As much as we want to actually take on the work of the entire,
No.
you had me there. I'm thinking,
Yes.
But in fairness, I think because the strategic plan actually covers a lot of these things, we will actually be touching on some of that as well. So I think there was only one item on the action list that and Brad just spoke to it that wasn't completed. All right. I think that with that, if there aren't any other comments, then and I noticed that Councillor Crisanti joined us, and my dog. Sorry, it's nice to have you here. You always bring so much to the committee, so we appreciate it. And we will go on to Tom's report. So over to you, Tom.
Great. Thanks, Linda, and through the chair to the committee. Just first an update on the fire that took place at 193 Wilson. Certainly, very concerning to the tenants and of that building and staff. And I know that the board was asking about it. So just an update and a reminder that this fire took place on November 6th. And as we sent in correspondence, several tenants and 12 units on the third floor were impacted, along with cleanup on the fourth and fifth floors. And two tenants remain housed in a hotel, and they will be returning and can return tomorrow. So then all the tenants will be back, and there is one tenant who remains hospitalized. So we do just kind of keep asking about that. And the Ontario Fire Marshal did attend the scene at the time of the fire to investigate. And I don't believe we've heard anything more from the Ontario Fire Marshal, Brad. And I see Brad shaking his head no. And then of course, so that's just thinking of those tenants, because it is frightening when this happens. It's very disruptive, but certainly wanting to express sincere thanks to the Toronto Seniors Housing team, and particularly those that assisted on site, and for all their efforts to support the tenants during, I think, this very difficult situation. And I also wanted to note that we will also be further reviewing opportunities to promote fire prevention through communication and education to help ensure the safety and well-being of our tenants. And just in terms of the staff, we had our United Way pancake breakfast in the Northwest, and over about 50 staff attended, and that was another opportunity for us to really thank the staff for their action that had been taken. And in fact, Councillor Cole, who is the councillor for that area, did comment on how well and responsive the staff were. So, it's unfortunate when these things happen, but so pleased that we were able to support the tenants and respond quickly. And then also a bit of an update on ONFA. So that's the Ontario Nonprofit Housing Association. That's the organization that has provincial representation for nonprofit housing. And I wanted to let you know that Toronto Seniors Housing, myself and Arlene, along with Baycrest and Ottawa Community Housing, presented at the ONFA conference on November 7th on the topic of bridging housing and healthcare through strategic partnerships. And I think the presentation and discussion were well received, and we do appreciate opportunities to participate in events and discussions like this. And if the committee members would like, we could circulate that the presentation. And there's about 160 people at this session, so there was some good discussion. And also there was even another session that I attended there that was about the partnerships between and what can occur between hospitals and housing. So that was interesting as well, which just leads me to another point that I would like to update the board on, and that's in terms of kind of impending work with Ontario Health. There's really two areas that we're kind of working on with Ontario Health. One is kind of Toronto-centric, along with Toronto Community Housing and Toronto Seniors Housing. And we had planned a meeting. There was a meeting for this Friday, but it got canceled and won't be till January, which is unfortunate. But that's to meet with Scott Ovenden, who's the Ontario Health lead for Toronto and the East. But then also Scott is working with so the second area is Scott's working with the local housing corporations across the province to look at how Ontario Health, the health system, can help to support how housing and health intersect better. So just wanted to provide that update in terms of that kind of partnership work with Ontario Health, and that it's going to get pushed back, at least the start of it, for another, I guess, looks like a month and a half. My next update is around the integrated service model, and recall and shared with this committee at the board that we presented to the Economic and Community Development Committee in October. And I would say that the report and presentation received very well, and it really the acknowledgements about this the progress that strong progress that Toronto Seniors Housing is making. And I think and importantly as well was the follow up. There was a recommendation that was adopted by the committee for the city through the Deputy City Manager's Office to report in April of 2025. On the work plans for parks, forestry and recreation, Toronto Public Health, social development, finance administration, and senior services and long-term care, and how those divisions can support Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation on any programmatic matters, and if there's kind of budget implications, then that would be potentially built into the 2025 budget. So nice to see this, the start of this more coordinated effort across the city to support seniors, and we certainly really kind of welcome that. And then I think finally for my update, just wanting to let this committee know that the search for the Director of Engagement, Partnerships and Communications, that would be Arlene, follow up from Arlene, that search that has been posted. I think now the last time I checked, we have almost 200 applicants who have submitted, and the posting is up until the beginning of December, and then at which time we will begin to call for the interview and that next part of the process, and so we know the value that Arlene has brought to this work, and the success that we've had, and certainly we really are very optimistic about maintaining the momentum in this area as we move forward. So that is my update to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you. I also want to thank all of the staff who were supporting the tenants and the community with the recent fire and the ongoing work. That's really a challenging situation. So thank you for that update. Any questions or comments about anything that Tom has raised?
I see Brenda has her hand.
Brenda has her hand up.
Yeah, thanks very much. I can only have 6 people on my screen at one time, so feel free to jump in. Go ahead, Brenda.
Thank you very much.
And welcome, Fareed.
Tom, on the presentation you did to, which was the committee of council, the integrated service model?
Yeah, economic,
right,
through the chair to the committee economic.
Did they respond to you or with any comments or suggestions? I mean, what was the response to your report?
Yes, so through the chair and to Brenda, so that the response essentially was one of the councillors putting through this motion, right? So that was this motion that city divisions, wanting them to work closer to support Toronto seniors housing. But
Okay.
I think overall on the report, Brenda, I would say, even in our kind of socializing of the report prior to going to committee, and so that was with Councillor Bravo, Councillor Fletcher, and then with the various deputy city managers and their staff. This report was very well received in terms of what they saw, the outcomes that were being achieved, and so that, and then certainly at council, at the committee level, there was really recognition and good questions about the work that we were doing. So I think it was very positive to receive not only the feedback, then also this motion requesting further work with other divisions. So I remain optimistic that it will, in the end, provide more supports for our tenants.
So I have 2 comments to that, and one is particularly public health, which has a seniors screen right now that would be consistent with their policy, but also in terms of services they can support, whether it's vaccinations or first responders doing visits for wellness checkups and stuff like that, and also parks and recreation, what they can do, provide programming on site for our clients and tenants, and thirdly, do we have a plan as to what it is we want to ask of those different divisions? So in order to avoid just meetings for the sake of meetings, I think it's always useful if we go in with our plan of what is it we would like to ask of Parks and Recreation to do, or Department of Public Health, or fill in the blanks, whatever division is appropriate.
Yes.
So have we got something in place or going forward where we can identify where we want the other city divisions to help us or work with us, or to practically provide something to us?
Well, I see. I'll let Arlene take this one. She's got her hand up there. So
Thanks. Go ahead, Arlene.
Thanks through the chair, Brenda. We are having discussions with each of the city divisions, some of which already sit at our partnership table where we meet and talk about the work that we're doing within Toronto seniors and how they can support. But working with TPH in particular, we're having a meeting in probably about 2 weeks to talk about the work that they're actually funded to deliver for the city that we could that we can access. And we've talked already with PFR about how we might better collaborate on bringing programs into the buildings. So those conversations are underway. We're just trying to get a better understanding of what they're all funded to support so that we can access the right kinds of programs in the right places for the tenants that need those services.
Well, I'm asking because this is now another set of meetings about meetings, like we're already meeting in some sort of partnership or discussions, and we can talk for months and years about, coordinating and talking, but nothing actually gets done. So I would personally like to stress and suggest maybe at some point a report coming back to us, either committee or full board, as to what it is we want to put forth, and so we can short circuit yet another 6 months to a year of people meeting to discuss the services that they offer or cannot. What is it we want? I mean, I have some very specific ideas about what I want from public health and parks and recreation. If you don't know what their mandate and jurisdiction is and what they can do, then that's one phone call to find out what is it they can do. Then after you know that, I think it requires us to think out of the box. Okay. And Parks and Recreation, I know in the past have done off-site programming. So we don't need to wonder whether this is something new. This is a continuation of previous policy. So we can save time if we, short circuit the meeting syndrome and just figure out what is the practical, because I know elected officials think this is helpful, and it is. But unless the rubber hits the road and you have some specific things, then it will just be another round of consultation for the sake of consultation.
So why don't we capture, thank you, Brenda, why don't we capture that in our partnership dialogue and reporting back that we include any partnerships with relevant partners through the city. And it does sound like there will be actually some more coming back from that very large report that was submitted in the follow-up work, and that will come back to this committee and the board, I assume.
Well, and also our last meeting where the councillors, we did ask of Councillor Morley and Chris Annie that they follow up talking to city manager. And I want to make sure we track that the councillors in their capacity do that, and that we can get some sort of response back. We were talking about the various agreements and stuff like that. And the councillors had suggested maybe now's the time to be a little more political and go actually to the decision makers. So it's kind of related to that, but slightly different, but still the idea of being holding people's feet to the fire.
Sure, thanks. Fareed, did you, I noticed you went off.
Yeah,
yeah.
I was going to say, I mean, this is going to take some time, right? I mean, I don't think we'll address this issue overnight. I think, I mean, I was that committee, and I think the motion is a very positive step going forward. But I think we also have to be informed by what Tenant wants. And we've done the survey. I mean, Arlene has done the survey. We know what it is. So the compilation of that list has got to be all inclusive. And I mean, I will leave it up to staff rather than getting into the minutiae of the operations, is for them to come back to the board with a proposal on what they intend to engage the city departments with. But I think we've got a very strong commitment through a motion for city departments to work with us to leverage their expertise in our building. So I think it's going to take some time, and let's allow staff to begin to sort of negotiate the parameters of that, and then they can come back to the board at the appropriate time to give us an update.
Thank you, Fareed. I think those are really sage comments in terms of making sure that we're, as board members, actually supporting the tenants and the staff in this work. So thank you. Are there any other comments or questions about we're still on Tom's report? Councillor Crisanti, so nice to have you here. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I know I've been listening. I apologize. I joined a bit late, so I may have missed a piece of it. So I just picking up on a couple. I think it was Brenda who last spoke regarding off-site programming for for seniors. That's absolutely correct. Parks and Rec would design off-site programming whenever these programs are necessitated. So we should be encouraging that, particularly that we know that we have more seniors outside of our portfolio than within our portfolio. So the other thing too is that's important is, of course, we also have senior rates. There's some really good rates for seniors that could be potentially up to half the cost of what the current rates are on the books.
Right. That's right.
So, yeah, and And also, Brenda, you're right. And so my apologies that I did indicate that I would, escalate the discussion about the lease agreement to the city manager. And so I have not done that, but I just turned over to my executive assistant, Amanda. I said, make a note. I made a commitment. I'm going to do that. Make sure that I do that. Don't let me off the hook here. So I'm going to do that. I mean, given I don't know how many years we've been now, it hasn't been that long, 3 years.
3 years.
And it seems like, going to the moon seems like a simpler task. So we need to nail down an agreement. And I want to do what I can on my part to make sure that happens.
Terrific. That's wonderful.
That's great. Thank you. And we'll minute that. We'll minute that to hold you accountable to. And we know that that some of our board members really look at the minutes. So
that's right. So yeah, and so those are my comments. And my concern has always been in general. We're trying to look after our seniors to make their lives as comfortable as they can, living in place and all of that. So our focus really should be on making that happen, and streamlining processes, communication, programming, everything, and security, everything that make our seniors feel living in places is the most comfortable thing for them to do. They're never alone. They always have somebody to speak to, somebody they can rely on to help them with any concerns that they have. And then reaching out to the other 17,000 outside of the portfolio, that's a challenge. That's hard. I don't know how we're ever going to be able to really do that effectively, but I think we need to really focus on some kind of plan to make that happen as well.
Yeah, it's a good point, Councillor, and perhaps actually as we're thinking through the strategic plan, we can think about when and how we actually tackle that is a big one, and in some ways within our mandate, and in some not in our mandate. So I think that might be something that we decide as a strategic priority coming up. So, but thank you for, and I just to the board members, I know I've been having conversations with Arlene and Tom, and this and the work that you did that you just presented. The partnership pieces is very, very complex, and and if we read that report that was put together, we're reminded that it's not simple. And we've got to break it down and make sure that we actually, as board members, actually think about what's our priority and what we're holding, the corporation accountable for.
Yeah. And Tom's got his hand.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, thank you through the chair to the committee. So just this is probably more for corporate governance, but I just want to kind of keep things kind of in the right laneway here in terms of our follow up, and Councillor Crisanti, to your point about kind of meeting with the city manager, just letting this group know, we'll certainly let corporate governance and HR know that there is a meeting being planned with Fareed and myself to meet with the housing secretary specifically around the agreements, because as we talked about, we want the city to understand kind of where we are, and also I have been working kind of from the staff perspective with the two deputy city managers meeting. So Councillor Crisanti, good to hear. So I'll keep in contact with your office just about kind of timing around when that meeting I think can would be good to happen.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
One point, Brenda, here.
Yeah, and then we can move on, Brenda. Go ahead.
I do recall, and your point about whether it's our mandate and are very good points. Remember, originally council had seen that we would be serving people outside of our actual buildings. Remember the whole controversy with the first hub was part of it was to serve outside in the community people. So I think whether we do it or not, but I think at some point there may be expectations that we'll have a role in guiding some of those suggestions. So it's good just to remember the political drive behind some of this, whether it's expressed overtly or not, that they may be looking to us for leadership on this.
Yeah, thanks, Brenda. No, really good points, and really, really good discussion. So thank you for that. It is complex, isn't it? So did I miss anybody else? Did anybody else want to make any comments? I think then we will move on. and this actually will actually be a nice piece of our strategic discussion. But I think at first we're going to actually hear from Brad, who's going to walk us through the operational dashboard. And I think you're going to put those slides up so we can follow it. Thanks.
Thanks, Karen, through the chair. So this represents the operational dashboard for the month end of October 2024. If we can go on to the next slide. Thanks. So with regards to the arrears, we are under the $1.6 million mark, which is a long haul. We're at just over 1.8 at the beginning of the year. So we've been able to collect almost $300,000 worth of outstanding rent from tenants. The vacancies have gone up a little bit, but still well below the service manager and the City of Toronto's expectation of 2%. And there's a little bit more detail in the following slides. Next slide. So this is the arrears, and shows you where we've come from at the start of the year and how we've steadily brought it down. I did want to add that we did add another color to this, and it's the purplish color that you'll see. And this represents tenants that are below 1 month's rent, which puts them outside of our arrears collection process. These are tenants who pay their rent, they just pay it late every month. So we tend to, our process allows us to avoid taking them to court, avoid any of the tenancy management issues that others would have, provided that at the end of the current month that they have a zero balance to their account. Next slide. The vacancies, again, like I said, our goal with the service manager is 2% for the year. We're well below that. We continue to turn units over at an exceptional rate. We've actually brought it down to 44 days per unit to get a unit turned around and back onto the market and find a new occupant. So it's been a real great effort by the team on this one. Next slide. This is a slide regarding the annual unit inspections. This is a heavy lift where legally we have to go through and inspect every unit once per year. We started this in July. We are almost complete. There are less than 250 units to inspect left. And this gives you an idea of some of the work that's generated by the staff with regards to some of the follow-up tickets for the senior services coordinators and the superintendents who go back and fix repairs and deal with issues that we weren't aware of as they were occurring behind closed doors. Next slide. A little more detail with regards to the work orders. You can see the spike that we've had in October. As I mentioned, as we go through the units and complete the annual unit inspections, we generate quite a bit of work that our staff then have to go and follow up on. Most of the work relating to pest control, 65% of our work orders. And we continue to see plumbing and alarm monitoring, which generally represents replacement of smoke detectors during the annual unit inspection. Next slide. This slide is regards to the administrative tickets that the staff generate, not only through tenant requests, but again, through the annual unit inspection. You can see that the majority of the tickets are with regards to their tenants requesting assistance with their annual rent reviews, and that over 52% of the tickets are being handled by the senior services coordinators that operate out of the building and have the best relationship with our tenants to stabilize tenancies and ensure that people have their rent calculated correctly. Next slide. And the last one is with regards to the pest management. This year, our integrated pest management team took an approach with regards to doing some training with our frontline staff before they began inspecting the units. As I mentioned, we started in July, and you can see the spike in pest control treatments. And these are treatments that are generated as staff have noted issues within units that we were previously unaware of, and we work with those tenants to resolve the infestations. I believe that's the last slide. If anybody has any questions on any of them, happy to answer.
Thanks. Is that a hand, Councillor?
Yeah.
Christiani? And then Brenda?
Yes, I put up my real hand.
Thank you. Perfect. I saw it.
Okay, so yeah, and again, I know this is really challenging. Back to the vacancy page. I note from May to October, vacancies have been a bit of a roller coaster. 211 down to the low of 176, back up to 215. But what that tells me is that we have 215 units available as we speak today. Is that correct? And why are we not at a much lower number? There must be a waiting list. I get people calling me all the time, asking me to, they're looking for, and these are seniors too, that the waiting time is like years away before they can get a place to live.
Brad, do you want to walk through that's just a background?
Yeah, no, it's a great question.
Yeah,
Councillor. So it's a seasonal blip that we see when we have the vacancy changes. For some reason in the industry, family side and the seniors both see the same change. When you're looking at the 215 vacants, what's important to look at is the chart below. So out of that 215 at the end of October, 83 of those were in the process of being renovated. So they were receiving new floors, being cleaned. Legally, we have to treat all units for pest control and ensure that they're pest free prior to putting them back on the market. And then on top of those 83, 54 are actually with the centralized wait list that's managed through the City of Toronto and the Access to Housing team. So they're in the process right now of being offered to various people who qualify, who are on the centralized list. And then 26 of those on addition are with the rapid rehousing program that we operate with the city in order to directly place people out of shelters. And then an additional 18 of them have been accepted by people, but they won't be moving in until November. They've accepted it probably sometime in mid to late October, but they're not going to be occupying the unit. Their lease start date doesn't happen until November. So when you actually look at the number of units that we have vacant, the difference in those charts, the 83 is really the one that we're focusing on. Those are the ones where we're trying to get them back onto the market. The others are already in some form, some manner of the rental process. Just takes a little time to get people to move in, arrange viewings and things like that. I will say this, that we only have one unit that was vacant for over a year. It required some extensive repairs. And company-wide, we only have 5 units that have been vacant for more than 6 months. It's a really great average when you look at, and I'll be bringing the local housing corporation data back.
Okay.
I believe the average is about 75 days and we're in the 44-day range. So we're really pushing to get the people off of that, because you're right, there is a long wait list in the GTA and in the City of Toronto for subsidized housing.
So then, Brad, moving, say, to the next 6 months, then are you suggesting that this 215, if we look at this number 6 months from now, fast forward, that those 83 units would have been renovated, other units would have been occupied, that we could potentially be looking at a much lower number?
Yes, sir. It's a rolling number. We turn over 120 units a month, about 120 units a month as far as move outs. So it's not the same 215 every month. This is the next month. Those the ones that are on the wait list and that will be occupied, but then we'll have October's move outs included in the November number.
Okay. So just to move on the next page, the page that speaks to annual unit inspections, are these proactive inspections or inspections that we're reacting to, that people are calling us with concerns and issues they have with respect to things that are listed on this page, bathroom repairs, flooring, doors, etc.?
Yeah, through the chair. Legally, we're required in the province of Ontario to inspect every unit once per year. These are all generated from those inspections. So they're proactive inspections that are legislatively required by our staff to go into every unit that we take care of. And this is the work that's been generated out of it.
So out of 5,100 units that have been inspected, where are we? Oh, here it is. So 1,862 work orders.
96% have been completed.
96% have been completed. Okay, no, that's great. I mean, this proactive work is critical. And then on top of this, how many people actually submit work orders over and above what these numbers here that we have as a result of the annual inspection?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, I don't have the answer. I'm happy to get back to you with information with regards to how many tenants submitted work orders we had over the same period. But you're going to have to give me a little time to pull that information together.
Yeah, no, it'd be interesting to compare that.
Yeah, yeah.
Look, we're being once a year very proactive here, and we've identified, you know, a 96% success rate, which is really good news. It's a great track record. However, if we're getting another, you know, 3,000 or 4,000 complaints in addition to that, then there may be something missing. So I won't say anything more because we don't know what that looks like. So I'd be interested in seeing what that looks like, maybe for the next meeting.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and there is a little bit of data about work orders on one of the other pages. I do actually see Brenda's. Did you want to comment? I know you lowered your hand, Brenda. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just saying the exact great minds think alike, Councillor. I was going to ask the same questions with one additional point. Under the annual unit inspections, if you note the first 4 items kind of can be related to fire concerns. So I know we don't know what caused the fire. I'm hoping it will be reported to us. But I'd like to know what happened. Is there a warning here for going forward? You know, was there certain inspections that need to happen? Is the clutter issue part of the fire issue, et cetera, et cetera? You know, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm just concerned about this fire and trying to be proactive in how we manage these things. And, you know, these are good indicators, you know, and we need to just make sure we don't ignore them because they do relate to the fire and the safety issues.
Yeah, I think Fareed and myself have asked Tom if when we get the report from the fire marshal, that it might be a good idea to actually just come back to the board. This is actually maybe risk under another committee,
absolutely,
but this committee as well, to get a sense of how we're doing on that. So it's a really good point.
Yeah, yeah. And also keep in mind, at one point, Councillor, is these are identified issues by the staff doing the annual inspections. I imagine there's a phenomenon whereby now people have heightened sense of things that are wrong in their apartment and may come back with additional work order requests.
Exactly.
So there, you know, or things that were overlooked accidentally or not identified, you know, all the things that can happen. And so I imagine there are so many hundreds or thousands of additional work orders on top of that.
I hope not 100,000.
Yeah. But it isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's what, you know.
You want things happening throughout the year. If something is happening in somebody's unit, it doesn't have to wait for the annual inspection.
Exactly.
You're putting the work order in for, you know, electricity or something that's happening. I agree, Brenda.
And it's a good measure of success in our communication and all the work we're doing on the engagement side, that people do feel able to speak up and say, hey, I need help here.
Yeah.
So it's a good little measure, even though it might seem to be a negative measure. On one hand, it can also be a measure of people articulating their needs better.
Yeah.
Linda, I'm sorry, on that point that Brenda has made, and I know Tom's got his hand up just quickly. Do tenants sometimes not, on a proactive audit, not allow you in their unit? So, and do we know how often that happens? And maybe and if not, and I don't need the answer now, if you could maybe someone undertake to bring that back together with the other information I asked for earlier regarding how many people actually submit work orders throughout the year as well.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I don't know if Brad wants to speak to that first, or Tom, if you want to jump in.
No, Brad can cover that, and then I'll make my comment.
Yeah, because I'm assuming that the 4% that you didn't get in might have been more problematic in terms of getting into those units. So it's giving us a little bit of information there, but I'll let Brad answer.
Yeah, fair comment. Thank you, Linda. Great comment. We do get into all the units. Sometimes we have to work with the tenancies and manage a tenancy. We really have to get involved, the levels of management, to go out and visit a tenant. We explain our legal obligation to get into the unit. But we do complete 100% prior to the year end. We're hopefully going to have those completed by the end of the month so that we can avoid going into people's units over the holidays and leave them to be. I would say if you do look at the work order slide, we start generating these work orders in August really, and if you compare May, June, and July, those are the tenant generated ones prior to us going into the units, and they're in the 8,800 to 9,000 work orders per month. And then once we start going through the units, you see about an additional 2,000 work orders a month being generated by staff going in. But I will break down the numbers further and bring a report back to the committee.
Thanks, Brad. And Tom, did you want to jump in?
Yes, yeah, through the chair to the committee, and more specifically, Councillor Crisanti, just around that vacancy. I don't, when we look at 6 months out, I still would be very pleased if we were in the 1.25 to 1.5% range. I just know in the industry, we are a leader now in vacancy. Not to say we still can't make those improvements around those 83, but I just don't want to set up any expectations on just, how low it would be. I think that would be a reasonable range for us. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, that's great. We don't want to cut corners too, because we want our units to actually be well maintained and ready to go. So, but those are good points. Any other comments, questions, Councillor? Did you have another point?
No, the only thing is I just wanted to let you know, I thank you so much. It's been very informative. I may have to jump off in about 5 minutes. I got some fires I need to put up that came suddenly here. So, but I thank you and look forward to that information. Just thought I'd let you know if there's anything anybody needs from me now, I'm happy to take any questions as well. Otherwise, thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor. As I said before, your comments are always very tenant focused, and we appreciate that. I had one question, Brad, and it's about the violations. With the 1,000 violations, how easy or hard is that to actually address the when you go in and there's a washing machine or a renovation or something, and it's actually on the tenant? Can you just tell us a little bit about what the process is for that?
Yeah, sure, Linda. So through the chair, the violations can range from anything from a tenant having removed the smoke detector in their unit to, you're right, having an illegal washer or dryer within their unit. They could have balcony clutter, anything such as that. Generally, when it comes to the washers and dryers, it's a harder thing to do because they can be covered up and moved. They can be removed from the unit and then put back. But this is one of the main roles of the SSC is to work with the tenant to hopefully avoid taking that tenant to court and explain to them how their behaviors impact their neighbors, right? If you have a cluttered balcony and somebody throws a cigarette off of their balcony and you start a fire, that's an issue for your neighbors. And generally, when we start explaining to tenants how their behaviors are impacting their neighbors, we get a lot of cooperation out of them that way. We also have access to other things. The integrated pest management team has a small budget for unit prep. So when we get into these cluttered units, oftentimes if the tenant and the tenant's family are unable to remove the belongings and clean up the unit, we can work with either our budget or through our colleagues at Toronto Public Health to clean units up. Hope that answers.
That's really helpful. Thank you. I think these board meetings actually it's a good education for us in terms of the activity behind the report. So thank you. Any other comments? Again, thank you for the good report, and really pleased about actually our vacancy rates and our arrears rates. They're still in the right direction, and it as verified by some of the feedback that we're getting from some other housing authorities.
Just a quick point from Brenda on the violation. On the violations, I mean, this also is related to fire, because if you look at the clutter and hazardous, those of you might remember 200 Wellesley, that was started by a guy flicking his cigarette onto the balcony below, and that caused this huge, as you know, mess. And he continued, by the way, he was rehoused and continued the same pattern of behavior in the new location.
Yeah, thanks for reminding us, Brenda. It's a really important point, and I'm heartened by the fact that you're getting into these units and that the proactive activity that is underway. Thank you. Okay, so we are going to move on to our next item, which is our strategic update on our strategic directions. And as I mentioned earlier, our committee actually has ownership for our strategy and quality. And we do actually have a deputant on this, but I think Bill has asked if we do the presentation first and that he would depute after, if that's okay with everyone. And it's okay with me. And I know Bill's on the line, so we'll go over to Grant first then.
Thank you, Linda, and to the chair. So before the committee today is a report. It's sort of the standard quarterly update type report we've been bringing forward on the strategic directions. I'm going to go over a few of the highlights. It includes both a dashboard view and a table that articulates updates on the actual specific actions in the strategic directions and what was planned for the Q3 period. A number of the dashboard items were actually, in a way, covered off by Brad on the previous.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go into significant detail there because there was a good discussion a minute ago, but under objective 1 and really the first page of the dashboard really is a higher level view of similar metrics that Brad just went through on maintenance, pest treatment, housing occupancy, and arrears, for example. One thing I will flag just for awareness, you'll notice the community safety box on the dashboard doesn't have data after March of this year.
Yeah.
That is something we've been working with the community safety unit on the provision of that data. They actually did a system change earlier this year that sort of impacted the ability for that reporting to come through. So we've been working with them to get that reporting back in place. And we actually have received some of that data just last week. And we'll look to include it in future dashboards going forward. And hopefully that will start to repopulate so you can kind of see what's going on with the safety incidents. They do have data. What it is they have, they need to complete the reporting sort of picture for all the different data elements. So we're working closely with them on that. What I will flag on the dashboard is more of the stuff that's on the second page of the dashboard this time, since we've done a pretty good dive on the operational stuff. So the second page of the dashboard covers strategic objectives 2, 3, and 4, and the enablers. And thank you, Karen, actually, for putting it up. That's great. So for example, a few things I will highlight on here, and I know there's a lot of information on here. You'll see that in the third quarter, 24 community activities fund applications were processed and approved. That's actually a part of 231 so far year to date. So quite a few CAF applications have gone through in the first 3 quarters of this year, and 24 of them in Q3. And over $100,000 was distributed in the third quarter as well, associated with the Community Activities Fund. So that's significant. And as we know, the Community Activities Fund is a key area to help with tenant events, activities, and equipment. So we're glad to see that moving forward. You'll also see in the boxes in the middle on programming that we're in Q3, we showed 222 recurring programs. That's actually a 14% jump even from Q2 of this year. And as was reported in other reports, including that service model report, this is an area we know there's significant potential growth in. The chart on the left shows the tenant-led versus agency or service provider-led programming, and on the right you can see it by types of programs. At the bottom of the dashboard in the enabler section, you'll see some stuff on the employer of choice. So our staff vacancy rate and turnover rate is there. A few things that the people and culture team has been highlighted here. There was an all-team event that happened on October 1st. About 200 staff attended that. And there are some additional resources that have come on board in the people and culture team that are noted here in learning and organizational development, health, safety, and wellness, and to also support the TSHC inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility strategy or IDEA strategy work. You'll also see a very high-level view of our financial position, which we bring more detailed. Vince brings those more detailed reports to the AFRC and board. You can take that down now, actually, Karen, thanks. Also attached to this report, and I wanted to mention that on the actual roadmap where we have all the different actions, 28 actions were noted for completion or planned for completion in Q3 of this year, of which 10 were actually completed. There's a table attached to the report that shows the detail on all of this. That's about 35% of the actions completed as planned. 14 are in progress and 4 were moved to ongoing. A couple of highlights on things completed. The use of community space policy is one that's noted as completed, and that was something that very recently went through the board. Some work on research partnerships with Women's College and the NORCs to look at that. That's noted as completed. That is a work in progress and will be a long-term project though. The city service manager did actually firm up some reporting accountabilities. That was one that had been on there for a while. That's been completed. And the one-year quality improvement project follow-up was completed as well. There were a few other things completed, but I just wanted to flag those. More broadly, and it's not in the report, but I wanted to mention something about the overall strategic directions in the context of, and Linda, thanks for flagging that this is the committee where we bring these things forward. We've also been doing some work internally looking at the strategic directions holistically. So looking at our progress, you know, from the beginning to now, across all that period and how we're doing. And I can report that as of Q3 of this year, overall, we've completed 70 of 135 time-limited actions. That's about 52%. And when it comes to the strategic objectives, the first 4, we're about 54% complete. And when it comes to the 2 enablers, we're about 50% complete. So we're on pace roughly for the same completion rates overall between those 4 areas. We've also been internally reviewing, more specifically, each of the actual actions associated and doing something similar to what we did last year at the end of the year. We also will be having a planning session with leadership team in early December to go through the roadmap as a whole. So, you know, there have been things that we've been working on this year that will inform potential adjustments or changes for the roadmap going into 2025. So as an example, there'll be projects and initiatives that we may want to include and add that have arisen throughout this year. There may be things that we anticipate that we want to look to include. There may be some adjustments and shifts for timing as well. Because one of the things we've also been looking at is how many of our actions have had to have a revised timeline, for example, and trying to use that to inform how we can plan going forward. So I'll stop there. You know, there'll be a more wholesome update on the strategic directions coming for the first meeting for the QTE committee in 2025. And so we'll actually have a broader update coming back in that first meeting.
Thank you. I think this would be a good time to let Bill provide that tenant perspective. Bill, I think you're on the line.
I am.
No pressure.
No pressure. No pressure. Just a second here. Yes. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. Hunter, and members of the Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to share a tenant perspective on the strategic direction. And I think first and most importantly, we need to acknowledge the incredible progress that's been made in these last 2.5 years. And you can see that as it was displayed and exhibited today by Brad and sorry, slipped my mind. You know, I mean, this is great work setting the cornerstone and the foundation for the new seniors housing. And you have to include the impressive teamwork and the staff effort that's been involved in making it happen. Great conversation today, and on a lot of points that that are an issue for many tenants. And some of it is how these things end up coming around and being a part of problems and things like rapid housing. Hearing stories about the antisocial behavior that's taking place in some of these buildings and the inability of staff and CSU and the support systems that are there to actually deal with the problem. And, you know, this includes things like something I brought up that, people coming in because there's a need to house people, but we're forgetting that there's also tenants here who have needs and rights and expectations as well. And when there is a 9-year-old child living in a senior building because there's a family that wants to repatriate. A family wants to repatriate, and with a 9-year-old child and a 40-something-year-old pregnant mother. That just totally, it's just totally undermining 8 years of effort to create a senior-specific entity. So we understand how these things might happen, but how do we undo these things when they aren't right and they affect communities? To go along with that same kind of line, I want to talk about Toronto housing and the accessibility upgrade projects that take place. And I'll speak to my building. We've had a project that was slated to take 8 months to change over a laundry room with a craft room. And the actual laundry machines have been changed over, but we now have fewer machines right now than what we had in the other room. Tenants are seniors who used to be able to do their laundry by putting it into a machine here and then taking it out and turning around 180 degrees and putting it into a dryer there, now have to travel between 10 and 20 feet to go from a machine to a dryer. Okay, this is dripping water on the floor. Tenants don't, and there was nothing provided for tenants to be able to move this laundry. So we create an accessibility, and in the process, we create a hindrance. And for some of our older folks, you know, it's inaccessible because they don't have the strength to pick up 10 pounds of wet clothing. So I think some of these things these are the kinds of little things that kind of get in the way of having that real sense of well-being and that sense of safety and security in the buildings. And so I'm hopeful that we can find some way to start putting these kinds of concerns into this strategic plan, so that we are aware that that when the rehousing projects create a problem in a building, it should be identified, and it shouldn't be just put in with statistics of calls that have been made complaining, because it's a separate issue and it's related to something that has a very direct effect on the community as a whole. And it's about accountability. So my 5 minutes are up. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for monitoring that. And I guess the question to Grant and Tom, because I think you brought some interesting, stories that are relevant, and how will these Bill's comments and other tenant feedback around what's important from a strategic perspective be incorporated into the decisions that you were talking about happening with staff coming up. The rapid rehousing wasn't something that was really, so much on our radar 3 years ago. It is now, and some of the other things, just larger issues like accessibility.
Through the chair, one of the things that we're looking to do with the strategic directions is to, in context, look at the relevancy and how current they are. So one of the inputs, for example, that we're using, and not the only one, but one of the inputs that we're looking to use is some of the feedback that came out of the tenant experience survey, for example, where a number of key priority things to work on were flagged. And we've been actually going through a more detailed discussion on some feedback that has been solicited through discussions with some staff and with some tenants. Was also discussed at STAC, to come back and actually look at things we might need to either enhance or consider adding, for example, to the strategic directions. With regards to programs like accessibility or the rapid rehousing initiative, we're hoping that some of the existing, items that are in the strategic directions to help with tenant supports, tenant programming, and improvements in areas like maintenance, for example, and some of the results that Brad has already discussed, will help continue to contribute to supporting those things. But I hope that through the process where we're annually looking at the strategic directions and being open to reflecting upon whether it needs to be enhanced or changed at some level, and coming back through committee and board offers us an opportunity to reflect upon things that we've learned throughout the course of the last period of time or year. I don't know if there's anything more specific. These are areas that I know we've had discussions internally about, for example, about how to look at some of these particular challenges that happen at times, and had opportunities to hopefully look for where we can maybe action things.
Thanks, Grant. Other comments, questions to Bill or to Grant? Comments, Tom, I'm not sure if you wanted to comment too, because it's so much a big part of your role too.
For sure, yeah, yes, through the chair to the committee, and I think to Bill's point around this accountability, I think it rests at various levels, and subsequently, whether it's the tenants or staff or staff, including senior leadership, it's okay. Where do we respond, right? So to Bill's point around youth or younger people in the buildings, those policies around around the tenancy and who's on the lease, those are governed by the city, right? So when we hear, and I'm hearing more about this from the tenants or from staff, actually, this is something that we can discuss in a more formal way with the housing secretariat, right? Kind of in terms of our meetings with them, indicating that we need to do some focused work, or these are the implications of this type of policy. That's the same thing for the rapid rehousing initiative, right? We have been, I think, as an organization, we have supported this work, but we've provided our constructive feedback. But what's important is that we do keep hearing from tenants and from the staff, and I think subsequently our accountability on some of these policies that are more city-based is we have to kind of represent the interests and work to represent the interests of our tenants and our staff in those. And even for something like accessibility, right? That is really led by Toronto Community Housing. We have been looking for kind of from a tenant's voice for that accessibility committee. But once again, it's good to hear what some of these concerns might be, because overall that accessibility work, I think, is pretty incredible. That's happening across all of our buildings. It's at a level that I never even saw in Hamilton, and I've always been impressed with that. But to your point, there are some of these areas that cause tension within that work, and so we have to continue to address those and kind of be accountable to follow up on those.
Thanks. I see Brenda's hand up. Brenda, would you like to comment?
Yeah, thank you. Bill Lohman, you're speaking to the choir, whatever the phrase is. As you know, I have been raising issues around the rapid housing initiative, and I have a couple of quick questions. Do we take people under the age of 59 years of age under this program?
Would you like me to answer?
Anyone?
Through the chair, no,
Yeah,
Through the chair, I think that's a question that would be best addressed to Brad.
Okay. And then I want to know what's really happening as well. There's two different things. There's,
So through the chair, no, we do not. Rapid rehousing and all people who are on the city centralized wait list have to be part of the application with a senior. So if for a rapid rehousing tenant, they would have to be 59 years of age or older.
That's right. Right.
For a regular tenant moving in, if one person on the application, say the husband was 62 and the wife was 57, but they were a joint application when they applied for housing, both of them would be on the list.
I understand. So in the case of the rapid housing, we're not lowering the eligibility requirements. Okay. Why is a 47-year-old woman with a 7-year-old child doing in the apartment? Is she, Bill, maybe you can answer, is she part of another senior person's unit? Like, is this the daughter moving back in with the mother?
To the chair, my understanding from having had conversation with the housing secretariat, as well as Tom and the individuals, my understanding is that, as they say it, the mayor is helping them to repatriate their family. Apparently there was at the time a 7-year-old child who's now 9 who they were trying to bring back in to bring their family back together, because the child was in in foster care.
In care, yeah.
So and I guess the gentleman is 59 or 60. I'm not sure. But
It
I
may be,
guess my
it may be at a level, we shouldn't go into the
That's fine.
details.
That's fine. The
Their,
point,
so
the point
bring it back to the staff.
the point I'm trying to make here is when people are there's what's happening, there's the official account, and then there's what's happening on the ground. And I
Yeah.
really want to start tracking this, people, in an explicit way. And I think we, even complying with the city policy and desire, we can say certain profiles of people who are suitable in a seniors building. Then that needs to be followed up with, if you're not eligible, I'm sorry, time to move on to back to Toronto Community Housing or wherever. So I just, this is the slippery slope. And once someone's in, you will never get them out. Okay, so it's really important how we do admissions. We need to get full profile of people when they do come in, so we know exactly their needs, their wants, their desires. But it's always against, as Bill says, the needs and wants of existing tenants versus needs and wants of these possible crew of people coming in. So I'd like some direct accountability and direct reporting. I've asked for this, and staff have been very good at doing that. But I as you know, have any number of personal and professional experiences with this. And I believe very strongly in the safety and security of seniors. And I've seen this movie before. And unless you proactively monitor this crap, you're going to go down this slippery slope. And then it's very, very hard to get out of it.
Yeah. And let's not personalize things, because I think this is just too personalized today.
That's fine.
Maybe
That's
also
fine.
we're assuming that it's rapid rehousing, and this could be actually in many. So I just actually think the larger issue in terms of the population that we're serving and ensuring the integrity of these being seniors buildings, and even there's probably some legal consequences also in terms of how we find families and stuff. So as you know, Brenda, this isn't simple.
No,
but perhaps bring this back to the staff to help us to understand it at maybe up a level in terms of the population, how that we're serving, and how big an issue this is. Does that make sense, Tom and Grant and others?
Yes. And the staff needs, because this is also additional work and burden on our current staff.
Yeah, let's try to see what the issue is though first before we actually, because I think that, and I know those kinds of situations can actually be a lightning rod for discussion. But I think we need, as a board, we need to actually understand what our role is in terms of understanding that our seniors getting into our building and what's happening with this. Does that make sense, Tom and Grant?
Yes, yeah, through the chair and to the committee, thank you, Linda, and others for your kind of perspective on this one. And we do have the numbers around rapid rehousing. We have the number of hours that staff. At one point, we're collecting the number of hours that staff were dealing with rapid rehousing. We have the numbers around other individuals in these units. So that I think if the committee would like that to be reported on a semi-annual basis or quarterly basis, please direct us to do that. And then I think that can help just give so that it helps to ensure that the committee and board know that we watch this very closely and that it's being monitored.
Yeah, that's great. Great
suggestion.
Any other comments and questions around the larger strategic plan? And it does, just as the chair, I am encouraged that I think it feels like it's the right time for a look at what's kind of on the horizon as we get into 2025. So I look forward to having that tenant informed and staff informed discussion in the new year. Any other comments, questions?
Linda, I do see that Jim and Lawrence.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. Jim, do you want to go first? And then Lawrence? My hand thing is just not even showing up today. So sorry about that, Jim. It takes a village for me to chair this meeting. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, you're on mute, Jim.
There you go.
When I heard Bill's delegation there, it hit me that the question was answered, that we're not taking in people under the age that we are housing seniors, because I've been a strong advocate for the rapid rehousing. A lot of my clients are seniors that I said, please get your application in, because we have certain we're trying to make sure that people who really need to get housed and have been on the streets for years get housed. And so when I heard him say that there's young people, and it hit me.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And good to have that clarification that there is actually an age criteria, that the rapid rehousing is not open to anyone. It's actually for seniors.
Good.
Thanks, Jim. Lawrence, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, on a different note, a minor suggestion. On page 2 of the report, the first paragraph is quite dense. It will be easier on eyes if you can have some subtitles, more paragraphs or bullet points. Thank you.
Thanks, Lawrence. We count on you for being our policy person, and I appreciate that. There was actually, there's a lot in there to go through. Any other hands up that I'm missing? Okay, terrific. Grant, do you want to just confirm again the next steps for this, for the strategic priorities?
Yes, no, thank you, Linda. So we will, as I briefly mentioned, for the next Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee meeting, we'll be tentatively scheduled in February of next year. I know the schedule is out for review through board right now. We'll bring back a more detailed, complete update on the roadmap, along with some proposed amendments for that for consideration. And that'll be something we'll include in the first meeting of the year. And then ultimately, if that's after that discussion, we would look to bring that forward to board for consideration. One of the other things I'll mention, and it'll be included at some level in that report in the early in the new year, is later next year. We also are tentatively scheduled right now to start our broader next strategy conversation beyond the strategic directions that we currently have in place. So I think there'll be some good opportunity to discuss that in the context of where we are with the current strategic directions and progress as well. So that'll be part of that next meeting.
Great, thanks, Grant, for bringing that together. And I did want to thank Bill again for bringing that tenant perspective, and his personal stories really do help us to engage in conversation. Any other comments or questions about the progress report? Okay, if not, and I'm checking to see if there's any hands, we will move on to the last item, item 10, which is adjournment. And I'm looking to call for adjournment. And hopefully, if you haven't had a chance to go outside, I'd recommend you go outside while it's still light out, because it's a nice day. Can I have a call for adjournment? Lawrence, would you move that?
So move.
And thanks, Fareed. Seconded by... I know there's a seconder out there.
Jim seconded, Linda.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I missed that. It was overlapping. Thank you. So all in favor? Great. And once again, thank you to the team for putting together a great agenda, and for all of the committee members for participating, and for those of you who've joined us on the live stream. Thanks, Karen, also, and all the backup team for a pretty smooth technical meeting. Take care, everybody. Have a good day.
That's right. Yeah. Thanks, Linda. Good job.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, Brenda.